Have you ever looked at someone you've loved for 4 decades and wondered if that youthful spark was still glowing after 40 years together? I thought I knew everything about Arthur, about our life, our love. But on our anniversary night, he showed me something unexpected. He showed me that some lights dim, but they never truly go out. They just wait for the right moment to shine brightly again. Want to hear how one quiet evening became a night of deep, rediscovered connection? Stay with me. Before I share what happened that special night, I want to reach out to others who believe in the enduring power of love. If you've ever wondered if romance can mature like a fine wine, if passion can deepen with age, subscribe to my channel. Let's explore together how love transforms and grew richer through the years. I woke up gently, the soft morning light painting the room gold through the slightly open window. A gentle breeze drifted in, carrying the fresh scent of pine trees and the distant call of birds. Arthur was still asleep next to me, his face peaceful and relaxed, the kind of peace you only see in deep sleep. I lay there for a moment, just watching him. My mind traveled back over our years together. His hair, now mostly gray, was once a warm brown. The strong line of his jaw, now softened by time, was the same jaw I first fell in love with 40 years ago. There were more lines around his eyes now, happy lines etched by shared laughter and facing life's challenges side by side. A wave of feeling washed over me. I loved him so much, more now than I ever thought possible. But sometimes I missed the energy of our early days, the way his simple touch could set something wild and free inside me. Now, things were different, quieter, more comfortable. That happens after 40 years of marriage. The world sees you as a solid pair, a team, and we were that. Strong and reliable. But there were parts of our life together that had quieted down, parts we rarely talked about. We weren't the same impulsive, passionate couple who couldn't keep their hands off each other. Life had smoothed those edges. I accepted it, but sometimes, just sometimes, I wished for that old spark to flare up again. The smell of coffee from downstairs pulled me back to the present. I slipped out of bed quietly, not wanting to disturb him. I walked down the hall, trying to push away those wistful thoughts. Today was special, our 40th wedding anniversary, and Arthur always had a way of making even ordinary days feel special. After breakfast, Arthur said he had something to do in the workshop and disappeared. That was typical Arthur. Quiet, not making a fuss, but always planning something thoughtful. Over the years, his little surprises had become one of my favorite things about him. They weren't big or expensive, but they were always him. Planned with care, full of his love for me. While he was busy, I decided to bake his favorite apple pie. As I measured the flour, my mind drifted back to the beginning. We were so young, so unsure of the future, but so completely sure about us. I remembered our first tiny apartment near the harbor, with its creaky floors and the leaky faucet we never fixed. We didn't have much back then, but we had everything that mattered. I remembered him coming home from his job, his shirt smelling faintly of the sea and hard work, and pulling me into a clumsy dance in our small kitchen. We'd laugh until we were breathless, ending up on the worn sofa with just a simple bottle of wine and endless dreams about our future. Life hadn't always been easy. There were times that tested us, moments when sadness or worry felt too heavy to bear. I thought about the times we faced loss, the quiet pain, the months of simply trying to get through each day. Arthur didn't always know what to say or do to fix things, but he was always there. He held me when I cried, even when I pushed him away. Somehow, holding on to each other, we found our way back. These memories were woven into the very fabric of our marriage, stitched with moments of pure joy, simple laughter, and quiet strength. Setting the pie in the oven, I felt a wave of gratitude, not just for the good times, but for the hard ones too. They had shaped us, made us who we were. That evening, Arthur suggested we eat dinner outside on the deck. When I stepped out, I gasped slightly. He had carefully hung the fairy lights we used for our granddaughter's graduation party the year before. Their soft glow cast a warm, magical light over the small table where he had placed plates of my favorite seafood pasta and a bottle of red wine. "Is it okay?" he asked, pulling out a chair for me. "It's perfect," I said, my chest feeling full at the thought he had put into it. We ate slowly, enjoying the food and the quiet beauty of the evening. The conversation naturally turned to our favorite memories, as it often did on nights like this. "Remember our first trip to the lake?" I asked. "How could I forget that little cabin with the rickety dock and the noisy crickets?" He laughed. "But it had the most amazing view of the stars," I added, smiling. "And we spent most of the time indoors anyway," he said, a playful look in his eyes. He raised an eyebrow, that familiar spark there. "We were quite energetic back then, weren't we?" I brushed away a loose strand of hair, the way I always did when he teased me like that. The truth was, I did miss that energy, that spontaneity. But sitting there, looking at the man who had shared every joy and every sorrow with me, I realized I didn't need to go back in time. What we had now was deeper, richer, built on a lifetime together. After dinner, Arthur simply took my hand and led me upstairs. His fingers felt warm and steady, wrapped around mine. There was something different in the way he held me tonight, not just affection, but a quiet strength, an intention. My heart began to beat a little faster, a mix of curiosity and anticipation. When we stepped into the bedroom, I stopped. The soft light of candles flickered on the bedside table, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The bed was neatly made with fresh, clean sheets, and the air held a faint, familiar scent, like the woody cologne he used to wear when we were first married. "Arthur, what is all this?" I whispered, my voice soft with surprise. He turned to me, his gaze steady, maybe a little vulnerable. "I wanted tonight to be special," he said quietly. "For you, for us." I didn't speak for a moment. Words felt too small for how his gesture moved me. It wasn't just the candles or the scent. It was the love behind it, the effort he had made, the choice to remind me, to remind us, that connection doesn't have to fade with time. He reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from my cheek. His fingertips lingered there. "You are so beautiful," he said, his voice low, almost reverent. My breath caught. The way he looked at me, it was as if I were the only woman in the world, just as he had looked at me 40 years ago. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them back, leaning into his touch instead. When he kissed me, it was different. There was a slow, careful intensity in the way his lips moved against mine, like he was truly tasting the moment, savoring us. His hand found my waist, pulling me gently closer, and I felt the strength in his touch, a strength that came from years of loving me, not just from his body. As he held me, the years seemed to melt away. The weight of time, the routines of daily life, the quiet compromises of aging, they all faded into the background. All that mattered was this moment, this feeling between us, as real and electric as it had been when we were young. His hands began to explore gently, but surely, as if he were rediscovering a beloved place and finding new beauty he hadn't noticed before. I closed my eyes and allowed myself to simply feel everything. The warmth of his touch, his lips on my skin, the quickening of his breath close to my ear. He whispered my name, and it wasn't just a sound. It was a promise, a reminder that this was more than just being physically close. It was about the love we had built, a love that had faced everything and grown stronger. As we moved together, there was an intensity that felt almost overwhelming. Every touch, every kiss, every whispered word felt charged with emotion. It was like he had found a way to touch the very heart of who we were, not just husband and wife, but also the lovers we had been and still were. I ran my fingers through his hair, amazed at how his body moved with mine, how he seemed to know exactly what I needed without me having to say a word. There was no hesitation, no awkwardness, just two people, perfectly in sync, completely present with each other. The world outside the room disappeared. The years, the challenges, any small worries, they all dissolved, leaving only this. His touch, his kiss, the warmth of his love surrounding me like a rising tide. And then, when the moment arrived, it wasn't just a physical release. It was emotional, a release of all the held-back longing, a connection of souls. It felt as though every moment of our 40 years together had led to this point. I clung to him, breathless, my heart overflowing. Tears slipped down my cheeks without me meaning them to, and he kissed them away, whispering comforting words. When we finally rested against each other, the room was quiet, only the sound of our breathing filling the space. He pulled me close, wrapping his arms tightly around me as if he would never let go. "I love you," he whispered into my hair, his voice rough but steady. I rested my head on his chest, listening to the calm rhythm of his heart. "I love you too," I managed to say, my voice thick with feeling, more than words can say. For a long time we just lay there, tangled together, the soft glow of the candles wrapping us in a warm, safe space. I gently traced patterns on his chest, feeling amazed by this man who had given me not just his body tonight, but his heart, his soul, his everything. It wasn't just the best intimate moment we had ever shared. It felt the most meaningful. It wasn't about trying to be young again. It was about honoring everything we had built together. The laughter, the tears, the quiet strength, the shared history. It was about showing each other that even now, after all these years, we could still create something beautiful, something vibrant, something new between us. I woke to the gentle light of dawn and Arthur's arms still around me. The room was quiet, the faint scent of that familiar cologne still in the air. My body still hummed with the memory of the night before, and a smile spread across my face. Turning towards him, I found him awake, watching me, his eyes full of warmth and tenderness. "Good morning," he murmured, his voice soft. "Good morning," I replied, brushing my fingers over his. Last night hadn't just been about passion. It had been about love, a love that had grown deeper, stronger, and more complex over 40 years. We had rediscovered something precious, something I hadn't fully realized how much I had missed. "I wanted to remind you how much I love you," he said quietly. "You remind me every day," I replied, resting my head on his shoulder. We sat there in comfortable silence, sipping coffee as the sunlight filled the room. 40 years together, and somehow we had found something new, something even more beautiful.